What our topic is for today is objection handling, or what we called through our marketing department, helped us craft the title, which is Win More Clients Through Effective Communication, which is great. I love it. And good. I see the objections are already flying in fast and furious. Keep them coming. I promise we will get to every single one of them that you send in. So send them in, send them in, send them in. So let's dive right in. And before we go to handling specific objections, I'll introduce Rich Casto. Rich Casto is our Chief Strategic Officer. He runs a lot of different big initiatives for the company. But Rich has been a trainer and developer of real estate talent for a long, long time. He's taken, Rich, what's the most listings you've ever taken in a year?
Just a little over 200.
200 listings one year. Okay, good.
Of course, the average price range was 100,000, so you had to take 200 listings.
Well, you didn't have to. You chose to.
Well, true.
Right. And most deals you've ever closed in a year, buy and sell side?
203.
Okay.
Not that I counted.
Not that you counted.
Yeah.
So real experience of being in the living room, dining rooms, and conference rooms. Has trained literally thousands of agents, so I can't think of someone better to handle the effective communication and various objections. But let's talk mindset first. One of the things I see sometimes is a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I see agents sort of going into the situation where they are afraid. So they are worried about getting asked will you do it for less, will you do it for less, will you do it for less, and then magically the client asks, will you do it for less? Or they're worried about getting asked about their experience in the business, and magically that's the question they get asked. So what's the right mindset when it comes to handling different objections? How do you work through that?
Well, first of all, I got to make a comment. I noticed you've got more hair. It seems like the Rogaine is starting to work.
It is, yes.
Just, you know, I haven't seen you in a while, and I'm like, look at all the little hairs.
You know, Rich,
the
here's the deal. There's only so many perfect heads, and God put hair on the rest of them. That's the deal.
There you go. Anyway, I got to say, before we get into the objection handling, and you know, we've been doing this for a while. I have a certain philosophy around competency, skill set, telling the truth. A lot of times you're handling objections because your presentation wasn't that good.
Sure.
Meaning, first of all, you always get will you lower your commission?
Right.
Well, that may mean that after you finished your presentation, they weren't that impressed. And I always look at the listing presentation objections as a function of there's 5,000 agents in the community. You just delivered your presentation. They don't see a differentiation between you and the other 4,999, so it comes down to price.
Right.
Kind of like when you and I pick an airline to fly.
Yep.
What's the first thing we look at? Price.
Well, and is it a nonstop?
Yeah, that's true.
Because I hate
agree.
stops. Yeah.
I agree. But so people look at agents the same way. So when you go out and you deliver your listing presentation, you need to deliver a value proposition that isn't a manipulation job, meaning marketing sells homes.
Right.
But it's more of this is the core competencies I bring to the table that separates me from the other agents. They'll pay a higher price for that. But if they can pay 4% to, or whatever the lower commission is,
right,
and they perceive you the same as that person, I don't care how great manipulative objection handling you're going to use, you blew it at the presentation.
Right.
Does that make sense? And that's why, you and I have put together, along with Kathy, a listing presentation that if they can get behind, totally separates them from the other agents in the field. And I think that's your first tool to handle any seller objections. I don't know what your thought is on that.
I agree. Differentiation is a real key. You have to have clearly defined how you as an individual are different, because we aren't all built the same. Right. So your life experience has prepared you. Every day before today has prepared you for today. And if you were an accountant before, that's going to give you a certain skill set in residential real estate. If you were an engineer before, Why? No, I'm just kidding. If you were an engineer before, that will give you a certain skill set. And if you sold new homes before, that will also give you
I'd like to officially apologize to all the engineers out there.
Yes, that the views being expressed by Keith Robinson are not the views of Mason-McDuffie or any of its sub-companies. So I think that having a real solid understanding of how you're different, what you bring to the table, what differentiates you personally, and then what tools, not that I really don't think it's a tool thing. I think if they like you and trust you, they may list with you. If they don't like and trust you, they will not. If they like and trust you, they may. But they may also like and trust someone else.
Well, let me give you an example, maybe to give them a specific example in the listing presentation that could separate them.
Okay.
That then at the end of the presentation, they don't go where you reduce your commission. They'll go, oh my gosh, I want to hire you.
Right.
NAR used to poll sellers every year and ask them what's the number one attribute you look for in hiring an agent.
Yep.
And it was always the ability to negotiate the highest price for my property. And then I have been in rooms of 4 or 5, 1,000 agents that raise your hand if you have a specific negotiation plan, and 4 people would raise their hand. And there's a big disconnect there.
Right.
So if you have the ability to go step by step with the seller in the presentation on how you know you can get more for their property in the negotiation process, then they're going to go, oh my gosh, this person actually has a skill set.
Right,
here,
a plan.
And a skill set and knows how to negotiate. But if you look at most agents' presentation, there isn't even a section in there on how they step by step get the highest price for the seller.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
It does.
And we can, as we go through this, I can give a certain step-by-step strategy that you can convey to the seller.
I've got an idea.
Separate you.
How about we do that right now?
Okay.
All right.
All right. So you're the seller.
Yep.
And so Keith, one thing that you get hiring me as your listing agent is my ability to negotiate the highest price for your property. You know, earlier in the presentation I asked, most sellers are looking for best price, sell it quickly, with the least amount of inconvenience. You agreed to that. Well, let me address the highest price part.
Great.
So once we expose your property to that big market we talked about earlier, we're going to get some offers.
Right.
Now,
lots of them.
Lots of them.
Okay,
now, in this market, Keith, we're going to get 40 offers maybe. So it's not really hard to negotiate the highest price for you. But let's talk about, let's say it's a normal market, which it'll start to normalize here pretty soon. Let's say we get an offer on your $1 million property, and let's say it's for $800,000.
Sure.
So it's 20% less than what you're asking. Most agents, even in this market, a lot of your hitters actually will get angry, upset, call the buyer's agent, how dare you, and write reject across the contract. I think people out there in the audience have probably had this happen to them before.
Absolutely,
right?
Yep.
Well, here's the mistake the listing agent is making, Keith. First of all, what price range was that buyer looking in?
800.
No.
$1 million.
$1 million.
Right.
Or it wouldn't have come up on the MLS, right? So they were looking at $1 million. Which house do they want?
Mine.
Yours.
Right.
So the agent would write reject and get upset over this because why? And if you try to understand why the buyer's lowballing, a buyer lowballs because their agent doesn't have a negotiating strategy. So the agent is executing the buyer's negotiation strategy. So what you have is incompetence coming up against incompetence, and both are supposed to be representing their client.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
So, Keith, this is what I'm going to do for you. When that offer comes in, let's say it's a lowball offer. I don't care. I'm going to call the buyer's agent and say, oh, thank you so much for the offer, which, by the way, I am thankful. And I really appreciate you thinking about this property, writing a contract on. The other agent might even be, oh, I'm sorry, Rich, it's kind of a lowball offer. Yeah. I'm going to say, that's okay. No problem. You could wrote it for $20. I got some action on this. I got something to work on.
Yep.
You're my new best friend. As a matter of fact, I love you.
Oh.
See, the key, Keith, is to make that, is to start getting that buyer's agent adheres to you. You catch more flies with honey. And so I'm making that agent my best friend, and they are my best friend. They wrote an offer on your listing.
Right.
And it's amazing how much information you can get from your buddy then what most agents do is posture, draw a line in the sand, and treat the other agent like crap.
Right.
Then they can't get any good intel.
Right.
So, Keith, what I'm going to do when we get that offer on your house, I'm going to make friends with them. At the end of the conversation, I'm going to say, oh, by the way, you wrote an offer for $800,000. Are they looking to spend $1 million or $800,000?
Right.
And they'll tell me, oh, no, Rich, $1 million. And then I'll say, so is this the one they really want, or are there some others? Oh, no, that's the one they want. Because most agents, Keith, are attached to getting the deal done, not negotiating the last $500 on your behalf. I'm going to bring this offer back to you. We're going to look at all the properties between $800,000 and $1 million. The only thing that matters in negotiating with a buyer are their other choices. So we're going to look at, they're offering $800,000. You want $1 million. We're going to look at all the houses between $800,000 and $1 million and see how yours stacks up. That's what you base your counter on, what the buyer can choose if they don't pick yours.
Right.
Now, let's say, Keith, your property at $1 million is the best property. There's nothing comes close to it at $1 million. You know what we're going to counter at?
$1 million?
$1 million. And say, knock yourself out if you want to buy something else under $1 million. Does it make sense?
Right.
I don't do things also that, let's say they come to $900,000 and we're at $1 million, and the agent calls me and says, let's split the difference.
Right. The old meet in the middle.
It's the most ridiculous negotiation strategy on the planet. That's $50,000 of your money I'm giving away just to meet in the middle. If the buyer doesn't have a better choice between $900,000 and $1 million, when the agent calls me and says, let's split the difference, the response will be, no. That's negotiating your best interest.
Yep.
So they did a study in a book called Freakonomics.
Yep.
Very popular book, and they studied Chicago real estate agents over a 25-year period.
Yep.
Those agents got 7% more for their own homes when they represented themselves than they did for their sellers. So that's not what I do. So you get my negotiation strategy as I discussed with you, and I guarantee you're going to get the highest price if you list with me.
Good.
So see, Keith, I've taught that negotiation strategy to a lot of agents, and they'll tell you that gets them the listing every time.
Right.
Is that they, just to show the seller you have a consciousness that you're going to negotiate.
And you're preparing them for the hurdles that you're going to have to jump in the future.
Right.
You've already set an expectation if they get a low offer.
Right. Don't get upset.
Don't
you don't
get
have to sell it
upset.
for
You don't
that.
have to get mad. So you've planted a lot of seeds that'll bear a lot of fruit as you continue to move through
And
the
you
process.
make a great point. A lot of agents go out on a listing presentation and they sell themselves to get the listing.
Right.
But what they don't do is tell the seller what to expect.
Yep.
And the definition of frustration is the gap between what somebody expects and what the experience is.
Yep.
And our sellers tend to feel a lot of frustration because they were sold at the presentation.
Right. And the big piece of the reason to go back to the mindset component that I think there's that pressure when you're in the conference room or when you're in the living room. You want to win so bad.
That's so true.
And
it's human.
I don't see the agents that I see that can really exercise detachment. And they look, if you're going on 2 listing presentations a year, then I get why you're selling. Because if you don't get it, that's 50% of your opportunities for the next 12 months.
Right.
And, of course, you're going to have a massive amount of attachment to the outcome of that appointment. If you're going on 2 a week, then you have a different approach. And the reason that you have, one of the reasons I think that you have the inequity in residential real estate where you have 20% of the agents doing 80% of the transactions is because those 20%, when they go, they're detached from the outcome.
That's right.
They won't take an overpriced listing. They won't work with a difficult seller. They truly approach it from the standpoint of, I want to evaluate if we should get into business together, and if you can elect not to, and that's okay, and I can elect not to, and that's okay. And if you think your home is worth $1 million and I think it's worth $8 million, then we probably won't get into business together.
There's no better satisfaction than to look at a seller and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you're willing to compete price-wise, I'm willing to list.
Right.
But if you're not willing to compete, I'm really not willing to list.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go in with that mindset each time, you won't walk away with listings that aren't competitive.
One of the things I tell newer licensees or agents who are really looking to grow their listing business is to go on a listing presentation a week and do that for at least 3 months. And if you can't get a real one, get a fake one.
Right.
And go, list your mom's house, list your neighbor's house, you list my house if you want to. You can come list mine, but treat it like a live, real appointment. Right. And that habit of going, well, a lot of agents don't go on 12 listing presentations a year. That's true. If you're going on 12 in 3 months, your listing presentation will get a whole lot better by the end of that 90-day period, because you're practicing, you're using the skills.
I used to say this all the time. I used to say, and this is to agents 10, 20, 30 years in the business. What do the 49ers do every year in August? They have training camp. What do they do in training camp?
2-a-days.
Block.
Yeah.
Tackle.
Yeah.
Run. Everything that they pass, everything they did, we did in Pee Wee football. I know we both probably played football. I know I did. So it's the same thing every year. They practice the same basic fundamental skill sets.
Yep.
And guess what most agents don't do?
That.
They don't revisit that.
Right.
And that's where the result comes from. This isn't a rocket scientist business.
And what's interesting is your top producers do revisit it
because they're always going on the appointment.
Exactly. So it becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy where your top producer has a better skill set at it because they're always going.
Exactly.
And your underperformer isn't always going and doesn't create a condition where they are. Right. And so then you end up in that same feedback loop.
Yep. I agree.
So let's dive into a specific objection here. This one actually comes from the audience, and then we'll do the FSBO one. For new agents, how do they respond to how long have you been in the business?
Oh, good one. Yep. So first of all, communication skill-wise, you should have a context to how you handle any type of concern.
Yep.
So that's the politically correct term for objection.
Yes. Concern. Got it. Okay.
Got it.
Yep.
Anyway, when a seller has a concern, if you run through this simple 4 steps, it's not a manipulation. It's a way to communicate.
It's an evaluative process.
Exactly. Yep. So if you say to me, you've only been in the business for 2 hours, I want somebody with more experience, I would initially communicate to you that I understand your concern instead of hitting it head on.
Yep.
Keith, I totally understand. I mean, you've got a beautiful home here worth almost $1 million. Why would you want somebody that just got their license an hour and a half ago?
Right.
Makes sense to me. So when you start that way, then they're more willing to listen to you because you understand them. So the first thing you want to do is empathize with them. Second thing you want to do is make sure that isn't the beginning of a long list of objections, because there's nothing worse that you get through a concern and they go, for instance, you finally get them to realize not to sell it on their own, and then they look at it and you go, you know what, my mom works at Remax. I think I'll call her.
Right.
You need to make sure. So I would say to you then, so Keith, my hour and a half in the business was not an issue. From everything else you saw, though, you would list, correct?
Yeah, I really like what I've seen.
Okay, so then now I know that's the only one. So now I need to overcome it and then close for a yes.
Yep.
So it's empathize, isolate, overcome, and then close. It's basically the 4 steps. So I would look at you and I would say, well, Keith, the whole reason I'm brand new in the business is the reason why you want to list with me. Let me explain to you why. The agents with a lot of experience have multiple listings. So they spread their energy through maybe over 5, 10, 15 listings that they have in inventory, and it's a numbers game for them. So out of their 10 listings, if 3 of them don't sell, kind of like what you were saying earlier, by the way, no big deal. I got 7 that do. I just hope your listing isn't one of those 3.
Right.
Me, on the other hand, you want your house to sell? There's one person on the planet that wants your house to sell more than you. That's me, because I'm new.
Right.
And here's the other plus. List with me, I have a broker/manager breathing down my neck, making sure I'm crossing every T, dotting every I. You're basically listing with my manager, not me. The experienced agent doesn't like supervision, puts the manager away, so they're not even being supervised. So you get somebody that really wants to sell, all the energy. You get all the experience of my manager and brokers inspecting everything that I do. So this is the reason why you want to list with me over an experienced agent.
Good.
Does that make sense?
It does. Great job.
Great.
Yeah. Especially on the experienced agent one, if you've done everything else right, They're asking it because they read a book that says they're supposed to.
Yeah, I agree.
So sometimes, especially if you feel like you're really in rapport, everything seems to be working and heading in the right direction, and then it comes up. An approach to evaluate. Sometimes there are real objections, and sometimes there aren't. They're just asking because they're checking that box that the first time home sellers book said. Make sure you ask how long they've been in business or how many homes have they sold. So sometimes an approach, if it feels appropriate, is to just say something like, "Rich, I hear what you're saying and I understand, but do you believe that I can sell your home for you?"
Yeah.
Great. Why don't we jump through some of the paperwork hoops?
Yeah.
Just
get the
just go back to truth, which is if you trust me and you believe I can sell your home, then how long I've been doing this kind of doesn't matter. It matters between our own ears, usually a lot more than the client's.
Yeah.
So
and that goes back to the value proposition.
You're right.
If you present it right,
correct.
You can say that.
Yeah, and if you're in rapport and it's really working and you
Yeah.
have that confidence, you're detached, you believe in yourself, it becomes very easy to say, do you believe I can sell your home for you? If the answer to that's yes, then it doesn't matter if I'm doing it 8 seconds or 80 years.
A funny story. I had an agent, I used to be on the road training a lot. So I had this agent go on a listing presentation and come up to me the next day in training and said, "Rich, I did that presentation." And then they said, "Would you do it for 5%? And I said what you said to say. I said, "No, I'm sorry, it's 6%. And they went, "Oh, we're so sorry. We were told by our neighbors to ask you the discount. You'll still list our property, right? We don't have a problem with 6%.
Right.
That's a reflection of the presentation and exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah,
exactly.
So when you hear an objection, don't get completely wrapped around your axle and like freak out and wet the bed. Right. It doesn't mean that they believe it. Sometimes it's just, look, whenever I buy something, my default answer when we're right at the end is, can I get it for any less, or is there a discount, or it's just how I'm wired. Yep. And when they say no, I still buy it, and when they say yes, I still buy it. I just buy it for less.
Exactly.
It's just how I'm built. But I have zero attachment to the question, and I'm not making a purchasing decision. I've already decided to purchase.
That's right.
I'm just making a pricing decision on trying to get it for less. So
that's very good.
Don't make it a bigger objection than it really is. Yeah. If they say, do you believe I can sell your home? If the answer is, I kind of think so, but I'm worried about how long you're in the business, then go to exactly what you just walked through, where you handle the objection. Yeah? All right. Cool.
Very good.
Okay, let's go to the question. I'm doing these all out of order. We're jumping all over the place because I'm in charge, and that's how my brain works. So how about that? So there was a question from the audience that said how to handle it with a buyer versus a seller, and my answer, Jim, would be exactly the same way. They said the time in the business, no difference in how you handle that. If you were working with a buyer, and they said, how long you been doing this? It's, especially with a buyer in today's market, I would just say, do you believe I can help you find a home? If the answer is yes, great. If the answer is, yeah, kind of, then I'd walk through the same process. And
you might want to use the power of our brand.
Yep.
How long have you been doing this? Well, we've been doing this 125 years.
It's a great answer. Yeah. Great answer. All right, FSBO. So this one is, Rich, look, I don't need an agent. The market's so hot. All you guys do is kind of stick a sign in the ground and offers flood in. I think I want to sell it on my own.
Hey, you know what? Obviously, that's a great thought process because I'm asking you to give me $60,000 to sell your $1 million home. So
exactly. It's a lot of money, Rich.
Keith, I'd want to save the money also.
Okay.
All right. So I totally understand. If the commission was not an issue, meaning I was going to do it for free today, you'd go ahead and list them.
Well, sure.
Okay. All right. Let me explain to you the difference between you selling it and then you listing it with me.
All right.
First of all, and by the way, you would want to pull these visuals out that we have. You'll notice this pie chart of where buyers come from.
Yep. It's in the listing presentation.
Right. So 2% of all the buyers that purchase a home purchased the home they purchased because it was advertised. Okay. Another 2% buy the home because they drove by it, saw the sign. 8% bought the home because it was advertised. These are really the only two options you have to market your home. Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay. So what you're doing is you're attracting only 10% of the market, while I have full control over 100% of the market. And would you agree, Keith, whoever can get the most buyers through your property is going to get the highest price, because that creates offers and bidding. Agree?
Yeah, I guess the more exposure, the more offers.
Right,
that does
right.
make sense.
So we have all these buyers because we have these keys to the lock boxes, and so they get to see 8, 10, 12 properties and then make a decision. If they come directly to you without an agent, they don't get to look at all the other properties. Does that make sense?
It does.
And here's the other thing. When somebody knocks on your door, Keith, because you're a for sale by owner, the only reason they're doing that is they have all the other options to purchase is because they want to save the commission too. So here's what happens. They knock on the door, they come in, they see it for $1 million, and they go, okay, they're not paying $60,000 in commission.
Right.
So now we're at a base of $940. Now let's make our offer based on that. Let's try $850. And so now you end up paying the commission anyway because the buyer's knocking on your door because they know you're not paying it. And this is the consistent experience that sellers have.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Yep. Good job. Also, too, especially on this one, I go back to identifying if it's a real objection.
True.
And you were masterful at handling the objection, but what percentage of homes sell as a for sale by owner? 2%? Yeah. That means if you go on 100 listing presentations, only 2 of those people are actually thinking about it.
That's true.
So
it's very good.
Usually I tend to start with identifying if it's real. So, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, of course you could. I do this for a living, so I'm well aware of how much work it is. Yeah. And if you guys are interested in adding another 20 hours to your work week, I'll have a quick dialogue about how to do it. You can maybe even hire me as a consultant, and I'll work on an hourly basis.
That's very good.
If you want to add 25 or 30 hours to your week, go for it.
Yeah. I was attacking it, and that's
and
I was attacking it.
You were the specific objection.
As I was on a for sale by owner.
Right.
It was already in the front yard.
It was already in the front yard.
For sale by owner.
Yeah. But if you're on a listing presentation and it comes up as, you know, we could just sell it on our own, it's, again, statistically, not just my opinion, statistically, 98% of the time it's BS. They don't want to sell it on their own. What they're really saying, if you're on a listing presentation, what they're really saying is they don't want to pay $6.
Yep.
It's a clouded way of getting to the commission objection without saying the commission objection. So if you're on a listing presentation, you hear we could sell it on our own, just hear the truth of that statement, which is, I don't want to pay $6, or I don't want to pay full freight, or I don't really value everything that you're bringing to the table.
Right.
It means that you not right or wrong, just in this instance, you haven't created enough value in what you do. Yep. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just got to go back and resell and re-expose and re-educate. It's okay. And then, Rich, you did a great job at handling the specific objection for a FSBO. So we've danced around the commission objection. Let's just dive right at that. And I love the one that you said earlier. Look, if you're in rapport, you're feeling the love connection, and someone says, can you do it for $5? A great way to start is to say this very complex script or dialogue. Get your pens ready. No.
Yeah. That's it.
My normal commission, my commission is 6%. And then just be comfortable with the silence. This isn't manipulative. A lot of times I've heard trainers say things like, first one to talk loses, prom. I hate that. What you do when you pose something, honor the other person and give them the space to think.
Right.
What they're doing is thinking. And when you say something, you're dishonoring their ability to do that. Right. You're stripping their ability to think away. Right. So I don't do it from a manipulation standpoint. I do it because I want to honor the conversation.
Yep.
And if they're really spending that much time, effort, and energy thinking about it, then let them do that. Let them have that space. Right. So one easy handler is no, but let's pretend they come back. Okay.
So you said, Rich, will you reduce commission by 5%? Hey, Keith, I totally understand. I mean, 1%, that's $10,000 on your property.
Yep.
I'd try to save it also. But based on looking at your property, I was actually going to raise it to 8%. Are you okay with it? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay, good, because that was going to get weird.
Well, let me tell you. Hi, table. How are you?
Hazard pay.
How's my knee doing now? Well, first of all, I would go back to my presentation. See, the presentation sets up handling the objection.
Yep.
If it doesn't.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you consistently are getting this objection, you have to go back and reevaluate your presentation. Especially, not if you're consistently getting the ejection, but if you're consistently having to cut from 6 to 5 or to a number, then go and rework your listing presentation, because somewhere in there's a gap. All right.
So I would reference back to the greater know-how or skill set that I'm bringing to the table.
Right.
I would say things like, well, I understand, Keith, that you want to reduce to 5%. This hot market, you think, warrants that. My fee is 6. What you get with me is what I presented.
Right.
My negotiation strategy should net you more than 1% in itself. So if you choose not to use me because somebody else will do 5%, what will you sacrifice? I don't know. I haven't heard what they said they're going to do for you.
Right.
I would only compare myself to the others and do it on the merit. Now, there's so many manipulative strategies to this, though.
The commission.
Some of my least favorite is, well, here's all the things I do. Which ones would you like me to scratch off?
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to beat the crap out of the person that does that one, to be honest with you. And, there's so many things. Well, to go through this, but it's all, unless you know one that's not manipulative, referring back to what you just presented, I'm going to manage the buyer's experience. One thing that I do in the listing presentation that's different than most is, Mr. Seller, one of the things I bring to the table is managing the buyer experience. When the buyer walks into your property, they're going to compare it to a whole bunch of others, and they're going to make a decision. My job is to make sure that when they walk into your property, the experience they have in yours blows away the other 8 they look at. I do that. That's part of my skill set. Name an agent that says that. All right. So if you have enough skill set differentiations and they still want a 5%, you need to go back to that and say, now, if you found an agent that has this competency for 5%, then I would hire them.
Yeah. I mean, the basic, I agree with everything Rich just said. I'll maybe go more macro with it for just a second. All agents have a number at which they stop, right?
Yeah.
And all of you listening are picking what that number is for you. For some of you, it's 6. For some of you, it's 5. For some of you, it's 4. Well, why do you pick that number? Right? Because the psychology behind that is why you stop. So some agents out there believe they're worth 4%. That is what they believe they're worth, and not opinion land. I mean, like, truly, I see the paperwork. That's what they believe they're worth. Some believe they're worth 6, and some won't budge off that 6. The other thing that I see, too, a lot is, well, back to that point for just a second. Make sure you start with yourself, and start with really believing, do the math on, 6% of $1 million is $60,000. Do you believe what you bring to the table, even though you only get half that? But is it worth $60,000? Because that's what they're spending, right? So, and if not, then continue to develop yourself and continue to work on what you bring to the table, those differentiators, so that when you look at it, you go, yeah, that's absolutely worth that, because what I bring to the table is better than anyone else. And here it is.
Yeah, and let me tell you something. I've heard this one too. Don't do this. Well, Keith, let me show you how commission works.
Yeah, the old through 1% to
I
my
get
broker.
6.
Yeah.
They're writing a check for $60,000. Yeah. They don't care about you playing victim on where all the money goes.
Sure.
It costs them $60,000 regardless of how it's dispersed. So please quit going down that path.
Right.
I don't know who teaches these things, but I don't know how many listing appointments they've been on or how their sellers feel about them. But that's one you don't want to go down.
I would agree.
And I will agree with you on what you just said in this sense. If you came out to my house to list mine, and I said, will you reduce the commission to 5? And you go, no, I'm sorry. I charge 6.
Yeah.
I'm listing with you.
Right. And now
I'm listing with you.
I get it.
You feel that
I have the confidence to say this is what I'm worth.
This is the guy.
Now, even Nordstrom's does a sale every once in a while.
Yep.
Right? So the other piece I would give you is, if you are going to negotiate commission, I'm not going to be naive enough to say no one will. Even Nordstrom's run a sale every once in a while. Why do we move in full percent increments?
Right. Sure, I'll go to
5.9. Does that work? Right?
5.9.
Yeah, does 5.9 work? Right? And then really try to determine, because that's going to flush out if it's a real objection or not anyway. Another question I always ask when I'm posed with this is, well, Rich, is commission the only determinant factor in whom you're going to hire?
Right, very good.
Because if the answer to that is yes, I need to pack my stuff and leave.
And start working on my presentation.
Correct.
Or there's just some sellers.
Some people just are that way.
Just grinders.
Right.
No matter how spectacular you are,
Yep.
they're not going to assign value to that.
Yep.
And that's a seller you just don't want. I mean,
because every step of that escrow is going to be a grind.
Yep.
Every step of that process is going to be a grind. They aren't going to have a good experience, and you won't get any referrals from them because they piss off everyone in their life.
Yep, that's very true.
Yeah.
One other thing that I've used before in a listing presentation that not a lot of people have heard is I have said this, and it has worked every time, and they never asked at closing. I'll tell you what, Keith.
This is a good one.
How about we do it for 6?
Yep.
And at closing, if you don't think it was worth 6, I'll write you a check.
Yep.
And it never comes up to closing. So that's another one that kind of sometimes works. And you're putting your money where your mouth is. Okay, it's the end of the experience. Was I worth it?
If you had a bad experience, you tell me what it's worth, and that's
Yep.
I like that one a lot. Yeah. All right, one from the audience here. Good one. On a listing presentation, client says, I really don't want to put a lockbox on the house, Rich. I don't like people tromping in and out, and besides, I want you to be there every time there's a showing.
Yeah. So, Keith, I totally understand. You've got Rolex watches and big screen TVs, and all kinds of things.
Right, I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
We talked earlier that in order to get the best price, we get to get the biggest market through the property. Mm-hmm. And you're competing with a lot of other listings out there. And let me tell you how, if you want to be a great listing agent or you want to know how to sell your property as a seller, you have to understand how buyers and buyers agents work. So they're putting together a list of properties to look at on a Saturday, and the only properties that they're going to show their buyer are listings that they can get into easily.
Right.
And the ones that they can't, they're never going to show it. So, I could say I could be here for every showing. There won't be many because all the ones that are on lockbox are going to sell before yours. So I need to ask you this question. Are you willing to kick to the curb, disregard, throw away the majority of people willing to purchase your home? I need to know that up front before we don't put a lockbox on the door.
Well, look, I just don't want all those people to kick to the curb.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, right? It's a hot market.
So you're willing to push to the side the buyer that may pay you the highest price for your property because you won't let them come in the front door. That's okay with you.
I don't want to do that.
That's what no lockbox will do.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. For the first time in the history of ever, my approach is more direct than Rich's.
No.
Yeah. No, my approach would be something along the lines of, Rich, and I can explain why, but here's the core of the question. Mm-hmm. Are you comfortable getting less money for your home if we use that strategy?
Yeah. Yep. Same thing, different way.
Just right at it.
That's very good.
Because if you're, or what I may start with before I get to that is, Rich, that's interesting. Tell me why.
Right.
Well, I've got Rolex watches, I've got this, I've got that, or, I've got a dog. I want to understand where the pain point is first.
Gotcha.
Because then, how much would it be worth to you to kennel Fluffy for 10 days?
Yeah.
Or is there a neighbor that could watch Fluffy for 10 days? Mm-hmm. Or can we get a fire safe and put all your Rolexes away for 10 days?
Right. Exactly.
Right. I want to identify what the fear point is there. And then so long as their fear point, me showing every time, me physically being at the property is a non-starter for me. I'm too busy. I'm not going to do that. Thank you, but no thank you. Unless it's like a $27 million listing, then maybe that makes sense. Right? But at some number, it might make sense. But short of that number, the answer is no.
Yeah.
But identify what the fear is. So find out why. And then say, so long as you're willing to make less money because of Fluffy, I'm totally open to the dialogue. Right? But most of the time, they love Fluffy, but they love money more.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
What's the number one reason? What's the number one thing they're looking for? Rich said it earlier when they're selling their home. An agent that can get them the most money. Yeah. So assign that dollar value to whatever the fear is, and usually the dollar value will win.
Just one last thing before we leave the objection handling, or handling the concerns.
Yep.
There's an overall thing that you can say at the beginning of every objection that may clarify what the issue is. So if the person says, well, you reduce your commission, you respond with, have you been drinking?
Yes.
Or
Yeah, that's a good
are
one.
you addicted to painkillers?
Yes.
Those two
Yeah.
have worked very well for me.
Yeah, Rich is actually writing How to Win Friends and Influence People version 2.0, and that's going to be coming soon to a bookstore near you, so be ready for that.
Just joking, guys.
Yeah, just kidding. Don't say that. Unless you want to have fun. If nothing else, you should have fun on a listing presentation or a buyer consultation.
That's right.
All right. Rich, thanks so much for your time.
Welcome,
I know
guys.
how valuable it is.
See
You
you
did
out
a
in the
great
field.
job. Thanks again, Rich. Quick 30-second commercial, and I really, really, really want you to mark your calendars for this. I've seen Leslie Appleton Young speak quite a few times. She's the chief economist for the California Association of Realtors. She is coming to do a special presentation for just our company. She is going to be here on April 4th at the Lafayette Events Center. And again, this is just for all of us. She is coming just to talk to us about what she sees in the marketplace. I saw her a couple of weekends ago in a small venue, and she really has some great insights into what's going to be going on as far as the economy is concerned, as far as real estate is concerned. Slight little takeaway. We are heading into, most economists would agree, 4 out of 5 dentists surveyed, most economists would agree that we are, at some point in the next 24 months, we'll be heading into the first time in the last 30 years where we're going to have upward trending rates. Rates will be trending in an upward direction for the first time in 30 years. This is uncharted territory for most of us who've been in this industry, because for the last 30 years, rates, if you look at a trend line, have been headed steadily down. The belief is, and I happen to agree, for a period of time, rates will have a trend line that is steadily up. And that's going to be the first time that's happened in a really long time. There's some interesting results to what that means for our residential real estate business. And Leslie has some of the answers to those questions: how to position yourself, how to prepare yourself, what objections we might hear, and how to overcome them. So if you're interested, RSVP to your manager by March 28th. This is a free event. Leslie gets a lot of money to speak. When she speaks, she's coming to us for free. And so please RSVP to your manager. I want to pack the house for this. She's awesome. I promise you'll get value from it. That's long enough commercial for that. But don't miss it, don't miss it, don't miss it. All right. Shifting gears. We have Cynthia Dake with us. Cynthia is a second-generation realtor with more than a decade of real estate experience. She's an agent in the BHG Tri-Valley office at Ruby Hill. Before becoming a realtor, she owned a staging company. She's the 2013 president for the Alameda County Women's Council of Realtors, and I'm really happy to have her here. Hi, Cynthia.
Hello. It's good to be here.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great.
Good. So we're going to dig in on just telling us a little bit about the Women's Council, telling us a little bit about leadership in real estate, about giving of your time, and how when you give, you get back. So let's just dive right in.
Great.
What's the Women's Council of Realtors? Who formed it? How is it? What is it?
Well, the Women's Council of Realtors is an arm of the National Association of Realtors, formed in 1938 by a group of 38 women from 9 states. Prior to the formation of the Women's Council of Realtors, women were often paid commission with a box of chocolates or a bottle of champagne.
The good old days.
Yes,
Yeah.
and somebody, well, actually a group of women decided that they pushed the box of chocolates off the table and said, I would rather have a commission, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, and now it's like, I'll take the chocolates too.
I want a commission and some chocolate.
By golly.
Yeah, good.
So we are, and this is our mission statement, we are a network of successful realtors empowering women to exercise their potential as entrepreneurs and industry leaders.
Okay, good. Great mission statement.
Yep. So in essence, we're a good networking organization to provide paths of leadership to Bay East and to CAR and to local, state, and national organizations.
Okay. And I'll ask the question. I know we have it later, but I'm sure people out there are wondering if they've never heard about it. You don't have to be a woman to be a member of the Women's Council of Realtors?
You don't, actually.
Nope.
We have about 1 in 7 of our members are men, and basically by joining, men are saying, yes, I actually do support women in leadership, and it's worth it to me to be a part of this organization and pledge my full support.
Good deal.
Yep.
So what's the relevance or relationship, Women's Council of Realtors, State of California? Share with us some of the exposure and some of those pieces.
Well, the rest of the nation, California basically leads the charge in seeing women in executive positions in companies in general. But as you take a look at the rest of the nation, there's a smattering of different trends all throughout. But the coastal states, you see a trend upward with women in executive roles. And in California, the push is to get even more women in those positions. So, for instance, there are 28% more women realtors in California than men, but yet at the local AORs, you typically see maybe 1 in 10 women presidents.
AOR is?
Association of Realtors.
Yep. Good.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so they really just are a way that you can get more exposure, more access, and more communication.
Yeah. So basically, there are more women with 4-year and advanced degrees in California. So we're looking to
grow that.
Exactly, and let that be fully expressed in those executive roles.
Good. And what separates women? I mean, there's YPN, there's Women Council of Realtors. All of them are good. All of them have their different spots. But what separates Women Council of Realtors from all the other networking organizations that are out there?
Well, I found, and I'm not quite sure why this is, but being affiliated with the Women's Council of Realtors, there's actually, it's a safe collaboration environment where normally in other environments, I've found that, you see someone from, a blue company or a red company, and you recognize them as a competitor, and then there's information that you don't necessarily disclose,
right? Because
you want to you want to keep a sense of protection around your trade secrets.
Sure.
So, but in the Women's Council of Realtors, for some reason, there is an environment that causes there to be a bridge there.
A lot of sharing.
Yeah. So there's a good sense of sharing. I like to think of it as a place where you get a chance to become the best version of yourself.
Yeah, that's actually a great point that segues to the next question, which is, I'm busy. I've got a lot going on. Why do I want to spend the time getting involved in industry-related organizations? How does this help my personal life? I'm trying to balance work, home, kids, family. Do you really want more commitment? So tell me just a little bit about the significance of being involved, and then how does it better, what's in it for me kind of deal.
Sure. Well, a couple of things. Speaking of involvement, there are varying degrees of involvement. So you can, be involved all year long, or you can just be involved in one of the committees. The advantage of involvement, basically, when you have your membership listed on your social resume, and you're in a listing appointment, for instance, and all things being equal, if those sellers have interviewed, I guess the average is 4 agents now.
Correct. Yep. Up from 3.
Yeah. And so you've got these sellers that are interviewing these 4 agents, all things being equal, and they see that you have an affiliation with an industry organization, a professional industry organization. They see that you are putting back into your own industry and that there's clout there. Yep. And I have seen that show up on when I go to present offers for my buyers in a multiple offer scenario, and someone sees my signature space, they know that I am going to follow through, and I'm going to be. It's almost like there's an accountability for integrity. Yeah. And when I don't have relationship with the agent across the table, it's kind of like a trust bridge. Yep. And so there's added credibility with my clients, and also with my peers. Yeah. I mean, I think, look, I do a lot of hiring. It's part of my job. And one of the things I always look for, if you're filling out a college application, if any of you have kids that are filling out a college application, that's right. One of the things they look for on a college application, one of the things they look for on a job application is, do you give back? Because it's been proven that people that will give of their personal time have better follow-through, have more skills in that department, and they're better hire. Yeah. They truly are a better hire. That's why colleges look at it. That's why employers look at it. It certainly gives you a little bit to help you win ties. Absolutely. And then there's another big component, and you touched on it, but I'm going to go even deeper, especially in market conditions like this, where you're having 20, 30, 40 offers. Yes. Your reputation with your peers means something. Yes, it does.
And if you haven't been in the business for a long time, or you were an REO agent who was busy doing REOs and wasn't really developing the relationships with your peers, you have to develop relationships with your peers in the marketplace, because you're going to be writing offers on their listings. And if you were on a committee and you really led that out and you impacted and created change, you are going to begin or continue to build your reputation with your peer group. And now when you write an offer on that listing, you aren't just number 5 out of 30.
That's right.
You are you who served on that committee, who really helped me move a cause that I was passionate about forward, helped me raise blank dollars. You're a human being now, not an unknown agent with a pile of numbers.
That's right.
So I strongly encourage you, if you have the time, to pick something inside of residential real estate first. There's nothing wrong if you want to be a Rotarian or, go do those other civic service organizations. They're valuable. They have great causes. But you get the double benefit of getting to give back and really create a relationship with your peers. I'll give you one warning, though. If you're just looking for a deal where you can show up and have lunch, there's nothing wrong with doing that inside or outside, but you aren't really going to be creating as deep a relationship as you can with your peers. So think about your time. Think about where you are in time and space. If you are 2 months away from the due date on your first child, probably not the time to volunteer for a committee, right? If you're getting married in a month, probably not the time to volunteer for a committee. So evaluate your personal time and space. But if it feels right, the benefit that you get is off the charts. Because in this market, more than in an aggressive buyer's market, we're in an aggressive seller's market. In an aggressive seller's market, your reputation translates literally to dollars and cents.
Yes, it does.
When I was selling, there were many, many times that I would get a counteroffer that I shouldn't have gotten. I might have been 6th out of 20, but because they knew me and they knew who I was and that my deal's closed and they like working with me and I was going to follow up and I was going to follow through and probably make them laugh a little bit, I would get the counteroffer, and sometimes my clients stepped up and we won.
That's right.
Your reputation has value, translatable to dollars and cents.
Yes.
And being involved in Women's Council or some other industry-based civic organization can help you really generate a lot of momentum in your personal brand.
That's right.
All right. That public service announcement's over. Sorry about that. So we might be, we touched on this already. Why do men join the Women's Council?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they support women in leadership.
Yep. And then I think we probably hit this one already too, but I want to get your feedback on it. You personally, tell me your story.
So I joined the Women's Council because someone asked me.
Yeah.
Someone just asked me if I wanted to join. I went and I checked it out. And I attended a meeting where I saw, the president of CAR,
Right.
at that time he was incoming, Don Fott.
Yep.
I saw, a local AOR, the local Bay East Association of Realtors, leaders and directors and so forth in the room. And I thought, well, I'd be in pretty good company if I joined this organization.
Yeah.
So that impressed me right off the bat.
Good.
And then I stayed because I'm going to tell a funny story.
Okay,
here.
good.
I became president-elect last year, 2012, and when you belong to an organization, you usually update your email signature space.
Right.
So in my footer, I had my affiliation with Women's Council of Realtors. Well, I noticed about a month later, I was getting calls were returned quickly and emails were returned quickly, and people, and I was thinking to myself, gosh, I love this business. It's so nice.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me the only thing that had changed was my signature space.
Apparently, I need to go join the Women's Council of Realtors because I can't get anybody to email me back.
I have gotten more, and I think the thing is they see that other agents, my peers see that there is I'm putting back into the industry. Anyone that joins is putting back into their own industry. And there's, like I said earlier, there's additional accountability there, and they know that you're going to be as good as you say, be as good as your word.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, Cynthia, thanks so much for giving your time. And I know that the greatest gift we can give is always time, because that's one thing you can't ever get back.
May I say,
yes.
if people want to join, how they could join?
Sure, go ahead.
If you want to join the Women's Council of Realtors, go to www.wcrsac.org.
WCRSAC, Sam Alpha Charlie.
That's right,
Okay.
.org, and look for Become a Member.
Okay.
All right.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for giving your time.
Thank you
Appreciate
for having
it.
me.
So a couple of highlights that we have coming up. Do not miss next week's show. Jim Colhoun, one of our top producers, will be here talking about exactly how he manages and succeeds in multiple offer situation, not just for buyer's agents, but also for listing agents. You'll get some great tips and tricks on how to navigate this market effectively. And again, circle April 4th, big event. It's going to be great. Leslie Appleton Young will be here talking to just us. And then coming up also, we have our online marketing and social media expo, which we do every year to rave results. So thank you all so much for listening, and go out and make it a great week.